All right, what is up, YouTube? So in the last one, we talked about the process versus product engineer and how understanding the process makes you a better product engineer and how that can help you in the future in the job market. So if you didn't see that one, make sure you go back and watch that because it's kind of an important thing to understand before you watch this one. So we're going to talk a little bit about what vibe coding promised and how we can actually use what it promised to make us better engineers. There's a few things we can do from vibe coding that will make our workflow better. And that's where we unlock the real 10x multiplier for being a software engineer with AI. The short version, if you don't want to watch this video, it's going to be a quick video, but if you just want the short version, is that AI multiplies everything, not just coding. So if you're only using it to write code, then you're actually making it harder for yourself because you haven't applied it to every part of the workflow. And coding was never really a bottleneck. It was everything around code, like review, having good architecture and planning. So in this one, we're going to go over how you can get a better multiplier out of all of the other parts and how that's going to increase your workflow and prevent burnout, and how you can keep the mindset away from vibe coding, but still get the efficiency improvements of being a vibe coder. So if you find this video useful, I'd love if you could subscribe because I'm trying to get to 1,000 subs. I'd appreciate it, but let's get into it. As I said, vibe coding promised to skip all the hard parts. Like we saw what everyone was able to build with vibe coding. They were able to ship a lot of features. They were able to build a lot of products, and that looked good at the start. Everyone was so blown away by like what it could do, all the promise that it had. But there was a problem, or there was several problems actually, but we're going to talk about one of the main problems, and that's the 10x multiplier. And everyone's talking about this right now because it's a real thing. Like the amount of progress I've made just because of the ability that AI has given me as a good engineer has made me so much more efficient. The problem I found was I was writing a lot of code, and that was only part of the problem. Most of my problems with AI came down to architecture. For me personally, the architecture that the AI would write was just dog shit. I hate to curse, but it was terrible. It would just do random things. It wouldn't really have a goal in mind. It would write a lot of code, and a lot of that code would be like slop. When I noticed that, the first thing that I had to do was I had to come up with a solid architecture so that it would allow me to use these tools and to keep moving forward. And that taught me something else. Like every part of this needs to be multiplied, not just the coding. Another big one was code review. Again, if you have good architecture, then the review becomes easier because good architecture will give you foundational blocks, right? You can have these blocks that will give you a good platform, and you can then just build on top of these blocks, which makes the review stage much simpler. You don't need to review every Tailwind class. You don't need to review every small minor thing. You need to review the business logic. You need to make sure that the architecture is still sound and that the security sound. And that's as far as like reviews go. My review process has gone from a couple hundred lines per PR to thousands of lines, and it takes about a quarter of the amount of time. So it's easily a 10x improvement on my code review. The architecture is another thing. We're going to go into all of these more in the next couple slides, but if you have good architecture, then that's going to lead to cost reductions in your token usage because you don't need to have the memory or the large token windows. You can do a lot of this with a fresh token window because of how the architecture is set up. And obviously planning. Planning is fundamental to everything we do in life. And if you don't plan well, you're not going to perform well. The key thing with vibe coding was it packaged all of these things. We thought it did a great job at all of these things. And it turns out it wasn't very good at this. It was okay at this, but depended on this, and it was okay at this. But really, it was automating this part and skipping everything else. It was just like, oh, this isn't important. And that got us to a point where everyone was vibe coding. The real lesson is that code is only part of the problem. So if you think about that, then you're already ahead of most people out there using AI because all they think about is code. Basically, just to go over it again, most people are only applying AI to coding. That's not to say that it's a bad place to start, but if that's all that you do, then you're really cutting yourself short because these ones are the key. These ones are key, and even marketing is a key thing that I've started implementing more AI into. So we're going to talk about some of the more important ones in this list, and planning is probably one of the more impactful ones, especially if you do nothing else other than plan and code. It's going to give you a lot because you can plan a lot of the architecture unknowingly. So most people have been just writing code straight away. I shouldn't even put coding here. I should just put vibe coding because that's all people are doing. They're not actually coding, they're just saying, hey, build this thing. That leads to bad architectural decisions as the project grows. It leads to confusion and roadblocks and having to build things multiple times. And then ultimately it leads to a product that just doesn't go anywhere. It becomes too hard to maintain, so people lose interest and stop maintaining it. So how we can apply AI to the planning stage is obviously use your plan mode in these tools. Like, don't be afraid to think about how you need to structure things in the future. Give the AI an overview. Like, don't just say, oh, this is the feature I'm building. Like, say, hey, this is the platform. Have a plan.md file that your AI can read through, so it has an idea of what it needs to do in the future, because those things are going to give it more understanding of what you're trying to do. And then as you go through, like, that plan's going to get bigger and it's going to multiply on the project. A clear architecture before the line is written is a big one. Like, again, we're going to talk about architecture on its own, but if you have good architecture, you don't need to worry so much about a lot of the nuances of these things. But if you have poor architecture, then that's just going to multiply as the project grows. And good planning obviously just leads to fewer surprises. Like, that's a no-brainer. If you've gone through the plan, if you've reviewed it at multiple steps, then you're going to have fewer surprises pop up, which ultimately leads to a better workflow, faster workflow. And AI multiplies your clarity before you do the work. This is where you will find bad decisions compound the most. So if you find you're not spending any time in planning or very little time in planning, then it's worth doing. I personally will use like Claude Code for planning, and then I will sometimes jump over to Codex or just keep using code for actually implementing the code. Code review is something that a lot of people don't enjoy, and I agree it can be tricky, especially if you are not used to reading code yet. That's a skill in itself and something we're going to talk about in the next couple of videos. So if you want to know more about that, make sure you're subscribed to see how I learned to read code more efficiently. But yeah, it's a dreaded thing. Like, people don't enjoy reviewing code. It's a part of the job we have to do. There's ways you can make that better with AI as well. So a manual code review consisted of reading every line, kind of understanding what the thing does. And if the PR was large, it meant you missed more issues. It was quite common to see seniors requesting very small PRs because they didn't want the burden of reading large PRs, because they knew they would find some things and they wanted to make sure that bugs were caught, and it leads to fatigue and slows the whole team down. So if you add code at a 10x multiplier, then this part gets a lot harder to continue as well. And that just means more steps are missed. So what we do is we use AI for our review as well. So again, like, if you have good planning, if you have good architecture, then you can use the AI assisted reviews, and that greatly reduces your overhead for your manual review process. And what do I mean by that? If you have good architecture, you can have those defined in your review step. So for me, I use Gemini Code Review, and I have all of my architecture decisions, my linting rules, all of that stuff in that file. And I have that run on every PR. That immediately takes away a large percent of my concerns with code review. So I've seen PRs now that are like 8,000, 9,000 lines of code, and I don't review every single line of code because I don't need to. The AI catches a lot of the bad problems. And then there's some core areas that I will manually read still, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. It doesn't get tired. Obviously, it's not going to skip things willingly. And human review reduces exposure and time, so makes you happier, makes it faster. But the parts that need to be reviewed are going to be pretty standout parts, things like core business logic, perhaps any testing around that business logic, anything that's potentially a security issue or anything like that. And what that means is, like, rather than reviewing every file, if you have good architecture, it might mean that you can skip any API routes that have been generated. You can skip any client component structures or server page constructions. Like, if you have the architecture in place, then a lot of that code review is passed off to the AI, and we're focused on the business logic. Shipping and SEO, this is a much smaller thing, and this is mostly here because of what Vibe Coding has done. To be honest, this is kind of something I'm still refining myself, but I have noticed that if you can use AI in this part, then you're still going to get those benefits. So for me right now, when I get to shipping a product and the SEO, I'm using Gemini exclusively. Like Gemini has all the knowledge of Google SEO console. So why would I use anything else? There's no need. So that's what I'm using right now. I kind of go through a few steps of like SEO optimizations and stuff like that to try to increase my visibility. We're going to talk a little bit about burnout because it's something I'm seeing a lot right now is people are talking about how AI has actually increased their workload and how people are just feeling burnout in general. So I personally think that that's because of this exact thing. They're applying AI to coding. They're not applying it to everything. So they're finding that they're probably needing to increase here. Planning and architecture. Again, these are the biggest two. If you can solve these two for yourself and your projects, then that's an instant 66% increase easily. Code review is next, and these two are kind of just thought experiments that will get you time as well. Code review is friction, architecture is long-term failure, and planning is short-term failure. So that's what I would be doing personally. Again, code review is an easy one if you have the architecture and planning. So get these two locked down. If you guys want a video on my exact architecture and how I set things up, I can do that. I can run you through what this entire phase looks like. So from planning to architecture to the actual code implementation and then to code review. I do briefly touch on it in one of my other videos. So if you're interested in that one, go back and look at my SaaS MVP process. But I don't really go over the architectural planning. So I can do that. Just let me know in the comments below. I want to talk about the things that you can't skip. And that's actual knowledge and understanding of what these things do. This was something I noticed before I'd even tried vibe coding myself or watching other people vibe code. It's like there's no way that they understand what they're building. They are just building for the product. And that is tricky. I see the benefits if it's a simple product or a simple tool that they're building. And I see the temptation. But that temptation is almost always going to hurt you if the product becomes successful and you have to make it performant or fix some security concerns or implement it at a greater level. Then that's going to be a problem you're going to have to dive into later, and you're adding more complexity in your future. So don't skip the understanding part, the knowledge part, because that's going to help you every step of the way. And you don't have to dive into understanding exact syntax and coding. We talked about that in the last video. This is about how you can just understand what the thing is and what it's doing. And then that way your knowledge of that thing is higher and you can actually use it with at least a simple understanding of how it works. Because it's going to break. Something's going to break eventually. The multiplier only works if you understand what you're multiplying. And that's pretty much a one sentence for this. And then architecture. So this is a big one for me, and this is something I'm always improving on. Like there's very little times that I'm not thinking about architectural improvements, because if you have good architecture, then that leads to better performance and better code and better review and better planning. Having good architecture means one thing, and that's predictable patterns in the code and code reusability. To break that down further, like all these AIs is code prediction or pattern recognition machines. So if you can give it an easier path to predicting the next character in a set, then it's going to do a better job of doing exactly what you need it to. So predictable patterns is the key feature to architecture here. It's going to unlock everything on this little chart. So it'll more accurately navigate your code base. It'll consistently enforce those patterns. Less code review because you're using the patterns for code generation. It also allows you to move faster. So it's not just for us, it's for our AI to make that multiplier better. I think that that's a big thing when people talk, like people are saying software is solved. And I think for the people that have these processes in place, it's solved. I can see that already. Like the path we are headed on, it won't be long until that entire model is completely solved. Those people have just seen it already because they've got these foundational things in place that make them so much better on every layer. And the multiplier is big, right? If you're only thinking about the coding multiplier, then it's a friction everywhere else and causes faster burnout, because at the end of the day, coding was the fun part. Coding was the part we enjoyed. Now we're stuck in planning, architecture, and code review. So if you're in this group, definitely think about how you can implement better planning, architecture, and review. And these two are kind of the later nice to haves if you can get to the point where you've got everything on this side implemented, because that's where you're going to compound your gains in a big way. This is where you're going to see the 10x improvements across the stack. Friction will be gone. You'll actually enjoy building the thing if you don't have to sit in code review for hours every day. You're not burnt because of the increase in workload. You're burnt because you're only using it in one lane. If you're skipping the learning, you're not using it at all. So again, back to the previous slide, make sure you're understanding the thing you're building. And remember, just all the lanes matter here. But this is just a quick video, and I really hope you guys find something useful in these clips. These are things that I have learned over the last couple of years, and I just felt like I had to share them. If you do find this useful, again, I'd love that subscription because I'm trying to get to 1,000 subs. And in the next one, I think we're going to do more educational mindset of like reading and reviewing code. So yeah, thanks for watching.